Hi everyone, and welcome to this digital event. I'm Thibaut, and I'll be co-hosting this event with Pierre. Today, we have the pleasure to chat with James Williams, General Manager and Vice President for Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games at the Coca-Cola Company. Hello, James.
Bonjour. I hope you're both doing well. Great to see you both.
Thank you, James. The pleasure is ours, and thank you everyone for joining this live event. So as many of you may know, the Coca-Cola Company is the longest standing partner of the Olympic movement since 1928. Our focus with James today will be on how this partnership is implemented on the field and how Coca-Cola integrates into the Olympics ecosystem. We'll speak about James' career, management experience, and the innovation implemented at Coca-Cola before and during COVID.
To this, I would like to add that we'll be covering some of the questions you submitted in advance. And aside from that, we are having a live chat where you can come say hello or send additional questions if you haven't done it yet. We'll try to cover all of them up during our Q&A at the end if we have the time. Are you okay with this program, James?
Yeah, looking forward to it and looking forward to all the questions.
Okay, perfect. So let's give it a go. Let's first talk about you, James. Can you introduce yourself? Where do you come from? How and when did you join the Coca-Cola Company?
Yeah, my name is James Williams. So originally from the UK, born on the south coast of the UK. So I'm a Brighton and Hove Albion football fan. To a German mother and a Welsh father, so I can have good news in both football and rugby. So very lucky on that one. So I joined Coca-Cola in 2006, just after the FIFA World Cup in Germany. Previous to that, I had worked in many different marketing agencies and across various different brands, and Coca-Cola was one of those. I joined Coke on the brand team and over a number of years moved into our integrated communications role with digital, promotional, various different areas of the business and part of its sponsorship as well. And then in 2010, when the Olympic Games were 2 years out for London, I was then moved on to be the torch relay director for the London Games, which was fantastic. Got to go to Vancouver and learn from our Canadian colleagues there. And then after London, 2012 was then moved to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, for 4 years to work on the Rio 2016 Games as marketing and experiential director there. And then after that, after successfully delivering the 2016 Games, moved to Tokyo for what was meant to be 4 years, has now gone 1 year extra. So I get to stay in Japan for 1 year extra. And originally started as the VP of marketing there, and recently at Christmas became the GM to cover the whole of the games. So yeah, that's me. Nearly a decade with the Olympics.
Brilliant. Can you explain in your different positions at Coca-Cola, how have you evolved between your experiences in London, Rio, and now Tokyo?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I think as you look at the different roles, I think in London, obviously from a personal point of view, I knew the market, I knew kind of the environment, the culture and everything. So it was a great hands-on opportunity for me as a director to execute the torch relay. So that was a team of 70 odd on the road, lots of planning, lots of different areas and touching the business, from marketing to commercial to sustainability and things like that. So very much hands-on, I think, at that point. I think then we go to Rio de Janeiro, where culturally as much as I'd worked in Europe for many years, so it felt that I had a good connection with the French, the Germans, the Spanish, and worked in good teams cross country in Europe, and then went and lived in Brazil. And I think culturally that was quite a change for me personally. So it was adapting to that and how do you work within that environment, but then having a much broader role. So how do we utilize the games, moving more to a much more global kind of campaign, working closely with our global team to build something and touch lots of areas. And we did lots of innovation in Brazil. It's a very innovative country. So it was great to then do that. And then come to Japan, and again, then you shift from one culture to very much the other end of the spectrum of cultural differences. And yeah, kind of then that role got broader, a lot more involved in the legacies here, building those legacies across the different parts of the business, building those relationships, and then now obviously responsibility across the delivery of all of the games. So definitely been a lot of personal growth. But also within Coca-Cola, we've constantly evolved and even sometimes revolutionized a lot of the things in the way that we approach the games. So I think lots of changes. It's been a fantastic 10 years. And as I say, I get an extra year out of this games as well. So it's been
really interesting. We will enter into those details you mentioned. So you've been successfully managing teams of C-level executives in 3 different countries. What are your main learnings from these management experiences?
Yeah, I think I think the first one for me is just really understanding cultural differences. For me, it's really about understanding, listening within each of the different places that you know and you get to know and things like that. So for me, understanding how you can still be successful with a team and the way that you manage a team. So the differences that you manage people both up and down, I think is really critical to some of the learnings I've made. So I think definitely so always make a point to understand the culture. There are just different ways people can say yes and no in cultures. The ways that you give feedback, the way that you address problems or you problem solve, you can co-create. So fundamentally, as different ways you need to approach it, and that's a massive learning for me. So for me, it was just like go in with your eyes very wide open. I think there's a great quote that God gave you 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth, and you should use them in that proportion. So listen and observe more than you speak. There's actually a fantastic book called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer, who talks about those differences and just the way that you can say yes and no or give feedback. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing. And the different ways that you motivate people. There isn't one size that fits all. I think we'd like to think that, but I think, the games allows you to give such an amount of motivation and excitement to something in their role that I think that's what becomes quite powerful, and that motivate how you engage with people in different ways is a lot of the learnings that I had.
Really interesting. So, well, as you know, we have a very strong community of entrepreneurs and C-level executives at Le Tremplin. Do you have any leadership advice to share with them?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you go more further up in your career, and then someone goes, "Oh, but we want to get leadership advice," it's always for me like, "Oh, really? You're asking me?" I see leadership very much like wine. This is my analogy. My grandfather at a very young age taught me, James, if anyone tells you they know everything about wine, they're lying, because you always learn about wine, and you pair wines with different situations and different moments. And I think of leadership like that. I think you're constantly learning about leadership, and it's trial and error. I was brought up on very much French wine. I have some great friends in France who continue to teach me about French wines, but then I moved to Brazil and I learned about Argentinian wines, about different wine, Chilean wines. And again, with leadership, that's what you're doing. You're constantly going out there and listening and learning more and more about leadership. And I think the main piece for me is be kind to yourself as leaders. So it's not like you wake up one day and you go, hey, I'm a leader. Great. This is it. I manage a team and I've got it. It's trial and error. And as long as you learn by that, I think Nelson Mandela said a great thing. He said, you never lose, you either win or you learn. And I think with leadership, that's the same thing. You're constantly trying to evolve. And I don't always think, and I've worked in cultures that have big hierarchies. Japan's a big culture with hierarchy in terms of top down versus flat cultures. And I think, you know, people feel that you've got to lead people to be a leader. But I think you can still be a leader without having direct reports into you. But the one key thing for me in leadership is it's not about you. It's an honor to be able to lead people, and you have to work hard at bringing the best out of people. And the moment you realize it's not about you and it's about the people that you work with and the people around you, and your job is to make them better or support them, that's when I think leadership becomes a lot easier.
Really interesting. Actually, it makes me think of the Start With Why by Simon Sinek and the why, how, what concept. While you were mentioning the why, and it's quite true that leadership is about the people before everything. So, can you tell us about the what? What are the main missions and objectives of the Coca-Cola Company of Tokyo 2020?
Yeah, I think so. For Coke, I think generally you comes down to what are we trying to do as a business, and Coke's all about, you know, it's about growth, it's about revenue and things like that. So a lot of those things that we do for the games are consistent. So driving sales, driving share, things like that. The really interesting thing that we developed here in Japan, and was a big step or change for what we've done in previous games, was moving to much more of a portfolio. Around 2016 or after Brazil, we had a new CEO, James Quincy, came in, and we talked very much about a beverages for life portfolio, a total beverage company, which isn't just about Coca-Cola, it's about a good, strong portfolio from waters to juices to coffees to teas, as long as also with our other brands. And when I got to Japan has a fantastic portfolio of drinks. We have teas, coffees, waters. We have loads of great, crazy drinks here, more so than any other market in the world. And for us, for Tokyo 2020, it was about how do we use the games to drive greater awareness of our portfolio drinks? Because a lot of people don't realize that, hey, you make here we Georgia coffee or Ayataka tea or Iloha's water. So it was about how do we bring that together, and that came together very much of the strategy that we built down in Japan, which then started to span globally, which was the Team Coca-Cola kind of strategy and the portfolio of drinks, which could then be executed differently in different markets. So I think that was probably the real step change for us here in Japan for the 2020 games, which has been great for us.
Okay, so now the question is, when and where do you start planning for each Olympics? How do you break down the work to accomplish?
Well, as you said at the beginning, we have been sponsoring the games for a long time, since 1928. So we have a lot of heritage with that. So, and with that comes from a lot of learnings. We've had a lot of great people across the team over years that have kind of built up our processes and how we approach the games. And a lot of people that have done a lot of stuff and taught me and kind of taught me how to do it. So we normally look at it, depending on the games, about 4 years out. That's where we'll start to do it. GMs and the senior positions are done normally about 4 years out. And then it's a process as we go towards the games. It differs from games to games. Sometimes winters slightly differently, less lead time, depends on the country. various different things like that. That's essentially, we'll always start to look at about 4 years out, start building the plans.
Okay, so can you share with us the key performance indicators you check on a regular basis?
Yeah, as I say, I think for us, it's the business results. So, you know, what we do here and when I arrived here in Japan was really about building the legacies in the different areas. So do we have key metrics and things like that? Yes, obviously we have sales data and share data and things like that we'll look at, because the impact of the games has on that in certain aspects. But we'll also look at the longer term impacts. So what are the things, when we talk about legacy, do we leave behind? It's always like, do you leave, you know, when we leave and the games moves on, what's the legacies we left in the country? And we look at those differently between them. So there's no specific one metric that we do, but for example, in Japan, we have a much bigger vending business, which is a lot of vending machines here, which is different to many other markets. So how do we make sure that we use the games to drive that forward? In Rio, it was different. It was what we call instant consumption packs and returnables and things like that. So how do we make these different pieces important to us for the future of the business? And how does the games allow us to drive that and accelerate that growth within those areas more? But what we try and do is keep that consistent within the business and driving the business growth.
Okay, so let's talk about your people, James. How do you recruit the appropriate people on your team? And how are your team organized to achieve these KPIs you mentioned?
So again, it's a bit of, there'll be a set standard. So when you arrive, it's like, this is how we've done games before. But again, it's about understanding the needs for that local market or business. And then how do we align that with global as well? We have various different ways. We have people within the business that we move around. So for example, I've moved from a number of games. There's a few of me within Coke that do this. We work closely with our global team to really build that consistency of learning and evolution and development. Then we look within the local market. It's important that you have a really great understanding of the local market. And you can only do that with local people because they have the contacts, the knowledge, the understanding. So we do from that. So we'll look at that within the business. And then also we'll look within our network. So whether that's within our bottler, so we have a franchise system with our bottlers, how do we use them to support us in much more of those commercial deliveries or the venue operations within the games? So we try and have a very diverse and inclusive. I look at my team now, it's super diverse and inclusive, not only in nationality, but or gender and things like that, but also just in the roles that they've done before. So some have got sporting backgrounds, some have got commercial backgrounds, some have got sustainability backgrounds, some will have HR backgrounds, but all of that comes together to make a really great high performing team that can touch into many different areas and be quite agile with the way we do it. So we look in lots of places.
Okay, we're going to cover the Coke-Japan relationship later on. I have a question first about the Olympics ecosystem, because to achieve your missions, you and your team also have to align to the strategies and objectives of all the Olympic stakeholders, the city of Tokyo, the Olympics organizers, but also other Olympic partners. Can you tell us who are your key interlocutors in the city and Olympics organizers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to remember the Olympic Games is a very large and complex event to put on. So you have to have a great network around that. And that network does span, as you say. So obviously IOC, IPC, and the organizing committee are specific in that. And then within that, we'll have key relationships between our global team, and the local team that we build on, whether that be through food and beverage because of our concessions and arrangements, to things like the torch team and the engagement team, because there's an ongoing piece that part of our role as a sponsor is to really help deliver the games. So that's part of our role and why we do that. But then you've got more of locally, you've got more of some of the local governments. So if you look at the torch relay, it's currently going across 47 prefectures. What are the relationships we have within those different prefectures and Tokyo metropolitan government and things like that? Then you go into NGOs and things like that. So sustainability, our World Without Waste kind of program within the business is really important to us, and recycling and moving that forward. So we need to work with the local NGOs as well to help support that and deliver that. The sponsors, partners, super important. We regularly catch up, both again globally and locally, to really try and make sure you've got to work closely with these people to make sure that you're doing the right things together, and not going against some of the different things. You're not batting up against each other all the time. So we work closely with them. And then I think you always need what I call the kind of the 10%, which is outside of that, which is non-games related, people that can really help you understand certain situations, can help you understand the kind of feeling within the market, that might not have any link to what we're doing from a job point of view, but it's really important to get their perspective on things as we do that. And very fortunate to have a great network here in Japan and in other markets that allows us to effectively deliver and give us different points of view, because the perspectives are really important. It's important that you listen to those as we go through. So yeah, it's a big network.
Yeah, it seems so. And so Coca-Cola was a founding member of the Olympic Partner Program, the top program. So you mentioned a bit about it. How is this top program translated into collaboration with other partners on the field?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to, and I think with other partners, is finding some of the shared objectives or the shared areas that you both want to work in. And how can you complement each other on that? So if we think about, okay, what's Coke's trying to do globally? So we've got our global objectives. How do these then ladder down to the operating unit and what their objectives are? And then what are those partners that we have within the Olympic network that can help deliver some of those plans, whether that's from a technology partner, payments partner, any of those communications partner, and how do we sometimes use those to help benefit both of our businesses? Again, it's trying to find those points of collaboration that can really work, and sometimes it's hard and it doesn't always work. You know, we are all very big different companies to a point, and have different shareholders and things like that. So again, we try and find different ways to really work together and support each other. And that can just be sometimes about sharing how we're approaching stuff. I think more so than ever in the current environment, we have calls with all the other sponsors, a lot of the other sponsors, as we're going through a very new phase in the postponement, the COVID countermeasures and things like that. And that's about sharing. How do you discuss what are you thinking about this? What are you approaching about that? And that's about sharing knowledge in the same way that we do within the normal industry. Yeah, I think that's how we start to look at those different areas where we need to support to be more effective at what we do for the business. So choosing those partners, right? Okay.
And so we understand that your teams are immersed in this Olympics ecosystem. How does it translate to the rest of the company? What are the links between your Olympic team and the rest of the company?
It's a great question, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we've been successful in doing this is because, as we talked about at the beginning, we set legacies, and they link to certain parts of the business, because the Olympic Games is there to, and the Paralympic Games is there to drive our business forward. So I need to link with the marketing team, the commercial team, the corporate sustainability team, all these different areas. And what happens is within the Olympic project team is we have, it's like a mini business unit that has then those connections into the different legacies. We take the responsibility of a legacy will be to that part of the business. So whether it's marketing, the legacy will be led by the marketing team, but they are completely integrated with what we do. So it's important that we are reinforcing the programs that the business is already doing versus trying to detract from them. So how do we make sure that we've got, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, for example, or all these different elements, that we are 100% in line with the corporate kind of direction, with the local direction, and we're supporting that and complementing that and using the power of the Olympics to drive that forward further. So that's how we integrate. It's a lot of work, a lot of meetings where you're sharing and connecting with different parts of the business, a lot of having, making the effort to make those connections and try to break down the silos. Many years it's always about integration meetings, about sharing plans, about keeping them up to speed, because, as I said, the Olympics is big and complex. Trying to explain that to different parts of the business, they might not understand. You're like, hey, do you want to be part of the torch relay? And they're like, sorry, what's the torch relay? So 4 years out, you have to explain what a torchbearer does, what the sponsor stocks do, what this does, and they're going, yeah, but this is in 4 years, why do I care now? And so you have to find, again, that middle point. Like, hey, look, this is going to help you with this, this, and this, or tell me what your objectives are for the 5-year plan, and I can help you. So it's very much about going out there, engaging with the different parts of the business, and working with them, and helping them deliver their business plans, their long-range plans, and how the games can help them do that.
Okay, and about the relationship with the team in Japan, is Tokyo 2020 a way to explore new opportunities for Coke Japan?
Yeah, I mean, it always opens up different opportunities for us in different ways, sometimes more than others. Again, the organizing committee obviously has a shelf life, so a lot of people within the committee, it's a large committee, and then afterwards it shuts down. But definitely within lots of other businesses, how does it allow us to start to build new relationships with new customers, people that we might not have had a relationship with before, whether it's different companies, and how do we build those relationships with them? And that kind of helps us as well. It helps with the investment and where we target, where do we put most effort into, about building new relationships, building new partnerships, that hopefully live on after the games. Again, it comes back to the legacy thing. We don't want to do everything just for 2 weeks in August, or a bit later, another 2 weeks. It's got to have more of a long-term thinking behind it.
And can you tell us about the process for testing and experimenting? How do you implement new solutions for the Olympics?
Yeah, it's a great question. This has changed for us over time, and I think as a company, and I think just generally over the last number of years, I think globally, not just Coke, I think everyone's more into a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 test and learn, which has been very much the startup kind of idea, or these innovation ideas. And Coke's very much adopted that. And for the games, it was always something we were quite nervous about. We didn't want to test new things in the games. But I think that's now changed a lot. So now we're trying to do this. So a good example here in Japan will be us digitizing pins, for example. Pin trading, for those that don't know, it's a crazy thing that happens during the games when all these people around the world are trading pins from different parts of the world, different games. And what we really wanted to do here was start to see how we can evolve that. We live in a digital world. Luckily, this started before COVID, because obviously in a COVID world, pin trading becomes a struggle because you don't want to be handing things backwards and forwards potentially. So how do we do trading digitally? And what we did, and goes back to 2 years ago, is start testing little things in little parts. So go and work with a customer on this, or go and work with this digital platform like that. And each way just testing and learning and testing and learning. So when we get to games time, you're like, okay, great, we can go big with this. And therefore you're reducing the risk of the investment in the way that we do it. So yeah, there's lots of different ways. And this games has been great. We had a lot of new innovations going, I think pre-postponement, and then obviously postponement changed things quite considerably, and we've had to rethink a lot of things, and then very quickly we're testing new things. We a classic word in this new world is pivot away from one thing to something else. So, and again, just test and learn. Had you quickly adapt? Had you quickly learn? And had you quickly scale? I think those are the ways that we've approached it. And what's going to be the best thing to engage consumers? Because that's what it's about. It's about the Olympic fans, and how do we make their little moment of happiness and bring that to life?
Okay, and speaking about innovation and testing, have you done some collaborations for Tokyo 2020? Can you state some examples of collaboration with innovative companies or even startups?
And if you may, actually, I'm seeing also all the questions of the audience. This question is pretty linked with Damien Cuillery, the head of Hello Birdie. What is the focus of the Coca-Cola Company when interacting with startups? What's at stake, and how can a tiny innovative company be the most relevant to you?
I'll answer the first one first. I think in terms of some of the new collaborations, I don't think we've had anything. I mean, we do collaborations, I think, for this games, and we had a number that were in plan. Were they small startups? Probably not. Were they incubators within companies like Google or something like that? Yes. That doesn't say that we don't listen to them, or we don't look at them. We do through a lot of the tech ways that we do stuff. So if I look back at Rio 2016, and we looked very much at the real-time marketing, so bringing that to life globally. How did we change the way? So it was a completely different way that we approached the games to previously. How do we expand it globally? And we worked with a bunch of startups on that, digital startups that had that kind of more agile kind of way of thinking. Coke can sometimes be a little bit, probably more previously, a little bit slow to adapt to change. I think that's changed significantly over the last couple of years. But yeah, so we work with those depending on what it is that we're looking at. There are a couple of things that we're looking at for this games, both the Olympics and Paralympics. Obviously can't share those at the moment, but we still work with them. And again, and back to the question of like, how do you work with I guess we'll work with anyone. It depends on the idea. We have quite a lot of people coming to us with ideas and things like that. So I don't think there's any hard and fast, easy way to get in or get recognized. I think it's about coming up and sharing ideas that we get a lot at. A lot of these is also linking through our agency networks and things like that, because obviously they have a good understanding of our business needs. And I think that's one way to get in. We have a good global network of agencies, so that's always a good way to get in and start sharing it, or approaching people directly. hopefully that doesn't fill my inbox with lots of requests. But yeah, again, good ideas can come from anywhere. I think we've definitely at Coke learned that good ideas can come from anywhere. So it's just about how do we see them and how do we hear them, and just understanding what our business model is. I think that's one of the things for us, is understanding where we're trying to get to. We sell fizzy drinks, and we sell drinks and soft drinks and teas and coffees and things like that. That's our business. So as long as it's linked to that, that's a good place to start.
Brilliant. I think that startups are pretty good at identifying business models, but sometimes Coke can be such a huge company to address.
Agreed.
So about this partnership side, it often takes a long time to build valuable relationships and partnerships. Do you have any advice to build smart and agile partnerships?
I think for me, it's about demonstrating, how things can actually, what's the impact of the business. I think we build relationships if we work on things and we see that they've worked. I think you can seed an idea, and it's how does that idea then evolve over time. I think demonstration of those kind of elements are going to help. We work with different companies on how those partnerships develop, and it comes down to more understanding of what we're looking for and how we're working towards stuff. So I don't know if there's a key way that we do it. And it depends on people in the business. So I think there's different approaches with different teams globally and locally, and it's linked to those environments that I think is probably more localized than trying to pull things off globally. So it's how do you get the seed of the idea and then expand it and scale from there.
All right, moving on to the trending topic, COVID-19 crisis management. I suppose in your work, you're already used to adapt to different locations, partners, even culture, as you actually mentioned. Do you think this factor gave you an edge in this crisis management?
I don't think anyone in their experience could have really understood what was going to happen. As I remember last year when we went over to Greece to pick up the Olympic flame, it was right in the middle of how COVID was starting to move around the world, and I remember as we left Europe to come back with the flame in the lantern, that Europe was very quickly shutting down. In fact, I think we left. We flew. One of the team flew out from Paris. I flew out from London, just as we were going probably into the no-fly list coming into Japan. So it was, I don't think anyone prepares you for that. And I think, like anyone on the call, the last 12 to 18 months has been a massive roller coaster. And again, I think it's been tough on people. And I think it's just about that learning to know and evolve things. So things are changing. Yes, they're changing. Do I think that changing cultures and country probably helped me a little bit? Yeah, I do. But that's not to say that there weren't times when it was kind of like, how do we do this? Everyone kept, we're very fortunate as Coke because everyone's like, oh, Coca-Cola works on the Olympics, tell us about what we should do or how should we do this? And then everyone's going, hey, so what should we do with a postponement? And I'm like, funnily enough, I haven't done one before. So I'm working with you guys to do it. So I do think it helps. I think, again, it's that understanding that you're constant problem solving. And I think it's good for everyone to know that everything is just changing. And I can tell you now, from where we are now to when we'll be when we get to the games in 2.5 months, I'm sure things will be different because it changes every day. And I think when you get used to that, it takes you a few months to get used to it, but then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm used to this. I wake up every morning, I look at my phone and I think, oh yeah, something else has changed. And how do you not let that get to you? How do you keep motivating a team to go, come on guys, we know why we're doing this. This is the direction we're going in. We stick to certain things and we'll change other things. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, that's quite clear. Now we have a question from the city of Paris. What are the impacts of Tokyo 2020 delay on the activation program? Do you think there will be an impact of this delay of Paris 2024?
From what I've heard, that Paris has already had some great plans in place, and I hear that the Paris Games is going to be a great Games. Obviously, there were big impacts for us from a postponement point of view. I mean, we were 2 days away from the torch relay leaving. I had a team of 70 odd people that were about to get on a coach and go and start the relay, and then everything changed. And so, yes, there was a knock-on impact for the way that we did that. Now, pause, do it a year, relay started again, and we're off and running again. In probably a slightly different way than we would have done probably last year. We adapted to what that is, and it has made us look very differently at the way we will execute the Games, which I think is good for us. So I think that's helped. The knock-on impacts for Paris, I don't think, I mean, again, this is my perspective. I don't know, I hope that when we get to 2024, that COVID will be something that we talk about. Oh, do you remember that 2 years ago? So I'm hoping we're in a very different world by then. But there will be implications on the way that we'll approach stuff. I think just generally as the human race, we will look at things differently. We will approach them differently. I think for me, the only piece will be the learnings, because the learnings that will be translated from Tokyo to Paris will be very COVID centric. And I think the danger will be that Paris kind of takes that as that's how it was executed, versus actually when we see a Games in full flow, what are all those pieces? So I think it's going to be really important for them to pull in on the experience of some great people that have seen Games previously. And France is a great country. I mean, it's had lots of events. It's got a good heritage of events, local countries around. So whether it's Germany or the UK, again, the same, that can bring that experience of what it looks like. So I think the knock-on effect will be not planning another Games in a COVID pandemic kind of era, and actually going back to Games as they previously were. So I think that will be the knock-on effect, to make sure that they avoid that. Because I mean, even it will be difficult for people to come to the Games and experience the Games here in Tokyo.
Interesting. So this next question is from Around the Rings, from Brian Pinelli. What are the impacts? Sorry, this was the previous question. So considering the delay, the uncertainty and challenges of Tokyo 2020, including surrounding the torch relay, has Coca-Cola even started to consider activation for Beijing 2022?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, we start about 4 years out. So there's a team in China, in Beijing. They've been preparing for a number of years. Obviously, they're now preparing for one that's very close to the Summer Games, like we've never done before. And obviously in a kind of COVID time as well. So yeah, it hasn't impacted our planning in terms of the time frame, but obviously there's a team that are working on it.
Thank you very much. So we have another question from David Silverstone, in charge of Paris 2024 at Atos. You addresses sustainability as a major topic. Can you give some specific actions, innovations you put in place around Tokyo?
Yeah, we've got a number of things that we've done for this games linked to different ways. So, for example, for the torch relay, the torchbearer uniforms that each of them wear has been made from a percentage of recycled plastic. So we did a recycling program that then helped to create those uniforms. If you look at within the torch relay, we give out certain gifts and premiums along the route, and also some samples. All of the samples are made from 100% recycled plastic. And so again, that's a step forward on that. And then at games time, so all of our products that will be used in the games will have got recycled rPET in them, and all bottles will be collected and become bottles again afterwards. So again, back to our world without waste, which is the closed loop, the circular economy. That's what we've tried to move forward in a number of different ways. So those are just a few of the examples. Again, there's lots of other things that we've done, you know, in the broader context of sustainability. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we've recently launched the Placard Bearer program, which is about highlighting great stories of diversity and inclusion. So more of that social contact, connection. Obviously, we wanted to do that globally. We've made that more local here now. So yeah, there's a number of different things and some great examples of that, which we keep evolving. I think it's always on our list to keep evolving and get better at.
Okay, so during this chat you mentioned quite a lot the legacy, the key concept of legacy. Can you explain how does legacy work at Coca-Cola, and how do you decide which initiatives to keep or abandon?
Yeah, so we build the legacies around the key functions within the business that drive the business forward, whether that's marketing or commercial or digital. Was one of the legacies, a new legacy that we did for Japan. We line up a set of criteria because obviously you have short-term impact, but you've also got some long-term impacts across with that. And you line that up with what the business plan is for the next 5 years. And you link those two together and you say, okay, is the games going to help us drive this better? So again, they're not legacies that are new. They're legacies that are going to help accelerate something that we were trying to do anyway in 5 years in a long range kind of plan. So those are the kind of things that help us drive those things more forward. Again, as I said, so the digital legacy was something that we recreated last year in the environment that we see, so we could drive forward a lot of those more digital engagements. How do you make the games more inclusive in a much more digital environment, which obviously we did in Rio in a great way, but then this is a different kind of situation that we'll have here in Tokyo. But that's how we embed those kind of legacies and understanding what the business needs are.
Okay, so well, as you can imagine, here in Paris, we are very, very excited to welcome 2024 Olympics. Are you already talking about legacy with the Coca-Cola team in Paris?
There is a team in Paris that are starting to have these conversations, and yeah, we talk and we share some of our knowledge as we go. So yeah, and it's about sharing learnings with these teams. There's new people being appointed, and I think that's where we start to see the legacy of Coca-Cola from games to games start to move on, and sharing those moments across the teams so that they can start to build their plan. Because remember, it's always quite a unique plan for every local market, which is great. And I've heard there's some great stuff that's happening in Paris and in France ahead of the game. So I'm super excited to see what you guys do.
Yes, we can't wait. And also we can't wait the Tokyo Olympics coming pretty soon. All right. Well, thank you, James. That was all from us. Now let's see if the audience has some additional questions for you.
Great, thanks.
And I have a question first from our team. So Coca-Cola is well known for its emotional marketing. And James, you also said that you have a background in branding and marketing. To what extent are your actions driven by Coke's marketing messages and plans?
It's a great question. Again, it comes back to, what are the objectives of what we're trying to achieve? The emotional engagement, depending on what you're trying to achieve, is something you can build into it. I think if you look a lot about, that's one of the things that Coke is great at, is building that message. And there was recently an ad that ran in Europe, which was Open Up, which was really great in terms of that messaging. And you got to be careful the tail doesn't wag the dog kind of thing. So it's not just about creating great, emotional, engaging content, which is important, but it's got to have an objective as to why you're trying to do that drives a kind of a reaction from consumers about doing it. Once you know and you've got that objective of what you're trying to do, then great. Adding in that emotional kind of message and engaging message is what's really important. So it's a happy balance, I think. Again, Coke's a great brand. It's a fantastic brand to work with. In fact, all of our brands, not just the Coke one. We've got some fantastic brands here and globally that have different kind of engagement and emotional messages we can call on. So yeah, it's a good question from your team.
Okay, thank you. We have another one about innovation and your position. So what is the scope of innovation? What is your responsibility on innovation, and how easy or difficult is it to innovate in your position?
Well, another really good question. It depends on what we call by innovation, because I think within Coke we have innovation which is product innovation, which is generally where our heartland lies. So new products and things like that. That'll always be run by the brand teams and the commercial teams as to what's the need. How do we integrate those into the Olympics? That's a kind of shared thing. So we work closely with them. We've recently launched Costa Coffee here in Japan. So how do we build that into potentially the launch with the Olympics and things like that? In terms of more, I guess, what we call digital innovation and things like that, if it's for the games, a lot of that is down to my team and working on what are we trying to achieve. We did a lot of tech innovations when we're in Brazil in terms of the social media, how we would engage with consumers, how we make it one click away for them to share it on their media. That can be driven from wherever, whether that's my team or my team working with the business, or the business sharing an idea with my team that will work for the Olympics. So there's no one place. It comes down to who supports it and where the funding will come from. So we're all great supporters of great new innovative ideas, assuming that they work.
Interesting. Maybe we can pick one last question. We have another one from David Silverstand. It's a pretty specific one about blockchain and non-fungible token initiatives. This is a big trend currently, and he would like to know if you already explore or prototype on this technology.
I think specifically at the moment, there's a number of teams around both globally and locally that are looking into this. I think the application of it is the one that different people are looking into. There's nothing specific that I'm and my team are looking at the moment. But who knows? I think these things come up very quickly. Again, it is a trend. It's run into some challenges in parts of the world, but it's also been something that exploded in other parts. So I think we're probably looking at it. I don't think we have solutions to it yet. it comes back to the objectives that we're trying to drive for the business. Does it fit into those?
Okay, thank you. So we could continue for hours, but time is going by, and Tokyo 2020 is already 73 days from now. I've checked it. So I'm pretty sure you have some work left to accomplish, James. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to see you both, and happy to share all this kind of stuff. So yeah, 73 days, a few things I need to still get done between now and then.
Awesome. And so for your information, this event will remain accessible on YouTube. Before saying goodbye, I would like to announce our next event. So we'll be hosting Julien Pivovar, responsible of innovation projects at Real Madrid Next. It will be on the 15th of June, so stay tuned on our social networks for registration opening. So that's it for today. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon.
Great. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, James. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.